One of the most terrifying cults that I have learned about recently refers to themselves as the Children. And the reason that they terrify me so much is because they are related to so many other cults. Well, Scientology came about in 1953. And two members from this church, Robert D. Grimson and Marianne McLean, decided to leave it and start the cult of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. And they brought their satanic teachings to the US around the 1970s. Well, if you guys watched my previous video about the Son of Sam killings, which occurred in New York City around the 1970s, you might be able to connect these two things together. Well, the issue with this case is that one man was convicted. But it seems as though police really fudged this up. There was so much attention around this case that they were just looking to just put someone behind bars instead of actually doing full investigations. Well, one editor named Maury Terry ended up taking investigating into his own hands. And not only was he able to find a substantial amount of evidence and cryptic messages, but he was also able to find where the cult would meet up for their rituals, Devil's Cave. Part 2 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. Well, it was rumored that there was a cult working in New York City that was an offshoot of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. They referred to themselves as the Children and ended up in Yonkers. Well, when Maury was doing his investigating, he was let know by several people that their rituals were done in Untermeyer Park, an estate that used to be absolutely beautiful. But as you can see from the pictures, there's now an abandoned pump house. And when investigating this, trigger warning, they found blood on the walls and blood on the ceiling. In symbolic writing. Not only this, but dead animals were everywhere, including specifically dogs. So then it was time to look back at David's letters, in which he made cultural references to Beelzebub, which is the demon known as Lord of the Flies, and Brat, which is a small devil. He also ended his letter as From the Gutters, which was quite literally the nickname for the abandoned pump house. And when holding how he signed his name at the end of the letters to the mirror, you can find the words Sam and Carr and Burke in it. So where were the actual sons of Sam and why hadn't they been questioned? Part 3 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. Well, after Maury had taken an investigation into his own hand and was seeing all these connections, he went to the police with it. And he was essentially just told to shut it down. That they had their man behind bars, there's no way other people worked with him, even though there was clear indications that he was working with a cult, and none of the eyewitness sketches even looked like him. So the last thing to do would be able to tie the Sons of Sam to the actual case. So John, Michael, and Wheat Carr were all the kids of Sam. Michael and John specifically being the sons. After talking to neighbors, there were several stories about Sam beating them. Their father Sam struggled with alcoholism, and this was all included in the letter that David wrote. So Maury's like, okay, let's go do investigating in the place that they were from. Minot, North Dakota. And when they got to their hometown, they were told by everyone that they were legitimately cult leaders. There was accounts of them sacrificing dogs, drinking blood, all of the work. So Maury was like, okay, we need to actually get a hold of these guys. Maybe they'll be open to talking about it, but soon after that, it was reported that they both mysteriously died. Part 4 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. So how did the other suspects mysteriously die, you might be asking? Well, one randomly unalived himself, while the other died in a mysterious car crash, which is entirely suspicious. So after adding all of this evidence together, they were able to release it to the public. And it made sense that Berkowitz would have had other people watching, other people holding the gun, other people doing the killings, all orchestrated by a cult leader. But because their main suspects for this case were now dead, there wasn't really much that they could do. Maury was trying to prevent this from happening again, though. Like, what if the Children decide to send another member of theirs out? Either way, their parent cult, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, was neighbors to Charles Manson, and is where he got many of his own foundational ideas for his cult. So it's so clear that these connections run deep. Let me know what you guys think of this case. Let me know if there's anything in this that you want me to talk about next, like Scientology or Charles Manson, or if you want to hear more about the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Either way, follow my Instagram for more content. One of the most insane serial killers I have ever learned about, I still to this day believe didn't work alone. So you guys know Jack the Ripper, right? Well, this guy not only outlasted and outdid him, but he put New York in one of the biggest states of fear and taunted investigators for years. Before we get into who he is and why I don't think he acted alone, let's talk about what he did. The first kill he ever made was stabbing 2 young girls on Christmas Eve of 1975. At this time, New York was an absolute shambles. People were being killed and assaulted all the time. Robberies were happening, bodies were being found, and the police really couldn't keep up with everything. So whenever this happened, it wasn't like a big news headliner. Well, a few months later, 2 girls were shot sitting in their car. Both of them ended up surviving, but it happened so fast that they didn't have any information on the suspect. Just some .44 caliber bullets left on scene. Well, the next attack occurred whenever this couple was sitting in a car. They reported that the whole car felt like it exploded, and the girl looked over and saw a bullet wound in the guy's head. Because of the bullets used, the police were able to make the connection. Part 2 to the son of Sam. So the police noticed that the same shell casing was used, and so far all victims were female with medium-length brown hair. Well, it did not take long for another attack to occur. A man approached 2 women asking for directions. When he asked, he took out a gun and shot both of them, leaving one paralyzed with a spinal injury. And then after this came another couple sitting in a car. The police, having no leads, were like, okay, we're gonna need to announce this to the public that we have a serial killer on our hands. They released the few sketches that they did have, hoping for a lead. He was announced in the paper as the .44 caliber killer. The police also let the public know that he was looking for women with medium-length brown hair. So many women during this time cut their hair, dyed it blonde, whatever, so that they didn't match this profile. After this came out, he ends up killing another girl on her way home from school, and another couple who was sitting in their car on a date. But this killing was very different. This time, he actually left a letter for the police. I'm going to insert the letter. He introduces himself as the son of Sam, and his wording is just a little off. So the news decides to write him back. Part 3 to the son of Sam. So let me just talk a little bit more about this letter before we get into it. He obviously refers to his father as Sam and himself as the son of Sam. He paints his father as this very abusive figure that's essentially making him kill. He refers to himself as Beelzebub and as a brat. And we'll get to this later. So a very famous news article writer at the time named Jimmy Breslin writes to him begging him to stop. And not only does the son of Sam respond to him, but Jimmy publishes his response. This changed journalism. I'll put the response right here, but he uses words like from the gutter, Sam's creation. Meanwhile, the public is preparing for the anniversary of his first killing. Pepper spray has been sold out. Everyone is terrified, and it just so happens on the anniversary, a blackout occurs. Looting, burning down neighborhoods, and all of the cops were working that night. But they got through the whole night without anything occurring. But not long after, another murder takes place. Robert and Stacy are attacked on their first date. Stacy is the only blonde that he ever attacked, but leaving her dead and Robert blind. After this, the police were able to collect 5 sketches. But all of them were different. Part 4 to the son of Sam. Well, a woman ends up calling the police reporting suspicious activity. She was going for a walk when she saw a man hopping into his car. Instead of continuing into his car, he hops out and starts to approach her. She sees him start to take an object out of a bag, and she runs the opposite way, and then hears gunshots. Learning about all the nearby crimes, she makes the report. She also noticed that he had a parking ticket on his car. So the police find the parking tickets from that day from that area, figures out the license, and realizes the vehicle belongs to a guy named David Berkowitz. So the police call dispatchers inquiring about the ticket, and a dispatcher named Wheat Carr answers the phone, saying that she was his neighbor, and says, "Let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Berkowitz. He's a very strange man who shot my dog that belonged to my father, Sam." So the police were like, Sam. Well, they get to his house and break into his car without a search warrant. And they find a lot of evidence, including a rifle, a map of the crime scenes, and a letter. So they wait for him to leave his apartment, and when he does, they ask him if he's David Berkowitz. And he responds with, "No, I am the son of Sam, and you got me." Part 5 to the son of Sam. So once they found and arrested David Berkowitz, they brought him in for questioning. And it only took investigators 30 minutes to get him to admit to everything. And his reasoning behind the killings was because of a 6,000-year-old demon dog who was speaking to him through the dog of his neighbor. He was the one calling the shots and demanding him to kill. And one particular investigator that was very obsessed with this case, named Maury Terry,